All right. Welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business on a moderately chill Thursday. The weather was a little up and down, but we made it. I think we made the most of it. I consider today almost a fall and spring day. There were moments when it got up a little warmer than you thought it would, and then it dropped right back down on you. But glad everybody here could make it to this space, make it to the squares. Welcoming Justin to the boxes. His camera's not functioning tonight, but we can hear him when we call on him. Hopefully, if he sticks with us. But glad you can make it. Bob, of course, always glad to have you. Danya on the wheels of steel. Appreciate you doing what you do. Uh, Tonight's topic. It was a bit of a complex thought I had, and I'm going to do my best to make sense of it in the space and see what kind of input and thoughts you guys might have about it. But I said for the topic is the considering of all things healthy for a reactive society. Is there a competent middle? Um, this kind of came to mind based on some observations in terms of when we just kind of can see clearly whether up is up or down is down and left is left and right is right. And we just seemingly find ways to complicate things that make sense sometimes, in my opinion. And for our society, as much as we like to react as if the level of reaction that we exude at points is demonstrative of being ready for the situation that actually took place. In other words, we limit our proactivity to an extent that is just counterproductive. And a lot of the canceling of people or a lot of the vitriol that comes from reactions to someone else's behaviors and such kind of limits, in my observation, the ability for us to really find some sensibility in situations, just some commonality to really find some common ground. So that's kind of why I came up with that topic. And hell, I hope it makes better sense now. Some it may not, but I'm going to play a couple of clips to kind of give us something to react to with that kind of thought in mind. So much is going on the last week or so, and just for clarity for people who are new to the Grown Folks Business Thursday night show, we're all over the place with topics and things that we talk about. We have an archive. Go check it out if you want to see where we've been and some of the things we've unpacked here. Tonight, we just kind of going to touch on some current events and center them around what the topic is. The Travis Scott situation. There's a performer. I think the show was in Texas somewhere, and 8 people lost their lives at the show. That's kind of a situation where you could have a little foresight and be a little proactive in trying to prevent some situation like that taking place, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The clips I'm going to show are from the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, though, which has been a bit of a messy situation, to say the least. But that idea of being proactive and then the results leading to some reaction that are not necessarily sensible. This is where we're at, and I'm trying to use tonight's topic in centering some of the actions that have taken place in this trial in the backdrop of this young man, this guy going to a contentious environment with the assault rifle, and shadow of protesting the shooting of Jacob Blake by a police officer, and he kills 3 people. He kills 2 people, and I think injures a third. It's an unfortunate situation, but now we have the trial, and some of the reactions from even the judge are kind of nonsensical, given the circumstances. some of the things that could have taken place on the front side, uh, like him not even going to this place with a gun that was not legally his, and with 300 rounds of ammunition, and it's just a sticky situation. So with all that being said, I'm going to play a couple of clips that are from this Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and we'll come back on the other side and discuss and unpack some. Bear with me while I share my screen. And there'll be 2 clips, so it'll be a little bit, and kind of process it, is see where we go with it from there. Let's see. Here's one.
An update now on the breaking news we brought you at the top of the hour. Kyle Rittenhouse is testifying for the first time in his homicide trial. The teenager is accused of killing 2 men and wounding another during last summer's social justice protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. A short time ago, he broke down on the witness stand.
And there were people right there.
NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now from outside the courthouse in Kenosha, where he's been watching the developments today. Gabe, what else did Rittenhouse have to say today on the witness stand?
Aaron, good afternoon. There was a lot to unpack here, and I can tell you, I've been watching a lot of trials over the course of my career. I cannot remember a time when the judge started yelling at the prosecution as he asked the jury to leave the room. That's what's happening right now in this courtroom behind me. The judge admonishing the prosecution for its line of questioning during cross-examination involving Kyle Rittenhouse. He just played that emotional testimony from Rittenhouse a short time ago. That was when the defense was talking to him about his interaction with Joseph Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum is the first man that Rittenhouse shot and killed that night in August of 2020. The defense has been trying to hammer home the point that Rittenhouse shot Rosenbaum and 2 other men in self-defense. And during Rittenhouse's testimony, the defendant said that he was ambushed and that basically he did what he had to do, not because he intended to kill these men, but because he wanted to stop the attacks. And that was his response when he was questioned during cross-examination by the prosecution. The prosecution assigning intent to him, the judge and the defense essentially objecting to this. And that's part of the reason why, again, the judge right now is admonishing the prosecution for its line of questioning. Taking a bigger look at this, Aaron, this is a case that is really culminating in this moment. This entire case had been building towards Kyle Rittenhouse's testimony. We did not know exactly when it would happen, but this morning, just a few hours ago, Rittenhouse taking the stand in his own defense. Now, this is a case, Aaron, as you know, we've been covering this now this is day 7 of testimony, but it's a case that has really highlighted several hot-button issues in this country: the Second Amendment, gun rights, racial justice protests. And in fact, we just heard Rittenhouse describe a point that had infuriated people like Jacob Blake's family. He, of course, was a black man that was shot multiple times and paralyzed by a police officer that really sparked this unrest. His family had been furious that Kyle Rittenhouse had been allowed to leave the scene of this shooting through a police line and turn himself in the next day. Rittenhouse himself was asked during the time he was on the witness stand just a short time ago why he didn't turn himself into police. He contends that he did approach a police officer with his arms raised, with his rifle behind his back, and he said, "I just shot somebody." The police officer, according to Rittenhouse, used an expletive and told him to get back and go home. Jacob Blake's family, immediately after this shooting, they were furious that this would not have happened if it had been a black shooter. That he was allowed to leave because he was white. That's kind of one of the undercurrents here in this case, and partly one of the reasons why it has attracted so much attention. Supporters of Kyle Rittenhouse have argued that he is a hero that stood up to himself, that stood up to those who were attacking him. His opponents have tried to portray him as a vigilante who is out looking for trouble. So that's all coming to a head right behind me in this courthouse. Again, Kyle Rittenhouse being cross-examined by the prosecution. His testimony is expected to last potentially throughout the afternoon. And then we're not quite sure what happens next in terms of any more witnesses that the defense might call. We could see closing arguments in this case perhaps as early as tomorrow. And then, of course, the jury would get this case. Aaron?
I have one more because, as you could hear, he's giving us a lot of things to consider. That's what I'm saying. The considering of all things, there's a lot to consider there. And this is what he was talking about, how the judge was reacting to what the prosecutor was trying to do with his questioning at that point. But just the behavior of the judge is fairly interesting right here.
For me, not for you. I understand.
1 second. Sorry about that. I think, yeah, the speed is not right.
You. For me, not for you. My understanding of you should have come and asked for reconsideration. You did on the one motion, and in fact, I granted your motion for reconsideration. That was not my motion. Excuse me. I did. I granted. We did not move. That was their motion. We've not filed any motions to reconsider in this case. It was their motion for reconsideration, which I denied. But I said I denied it, or I indicated a bias towards denial is what I did. Held it open with a bias towards denial. Why would you think that that made it okay for you without any advance notice to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
Yeah, pretty fascinating stuff. And again, the way that I'm attempting to, Jess, what's going on, man? Long time no see. I have to interrupt the show to say hey to that man. That's a nice backdrop you got there too. But yeah, so the question, I thought the clip of the news reporter explaining all this at play with this situation, all that was at play, all of these things that are being considered in the backdrop of something that could potentially be whittled down to, I think the gun was not legal. It was a legal weapon. He was out past curfew, something that the judge has already dismissed as something that was prosecutable because the prosecution didn't bring it up or something, but he's out past curfew. He enters a hostile environment. He's not even from the area. There's just a lot of things that make more sense for the focus of this type of situation. Yet the considering of all things when it comes to the circumstances around Jacob Blake being shot, the black, white, the race issue, the assault weapons, some ideas centered around heroism for defending himself in those circumstances and potentially defending property, which was a point of contention with the lawyer and the judge. Is there a competent middle? Can we get past some of these notions of there being so much to consider and so much that we have to think about that it actually bogs us down and causes us to be so reactive when, in essence, the argument of proactivity in that situation kind of lends itself to just, he shouldn't have been there. as often as conversation around parents and what are they teaching the kids and what are your kids doing and there was nothing that made sense for that. I think he was 17 at the time or whatever. There's nothing that made sense for him to be in that environment, walking around with a assault rifle. But anyway, that's my spiel. That's my attempt to give clarity for tonight's topic. Justin, you joined us at a time when I got a little tricky with this thing, but I'll come around the space and get some takes on this and find out what your thoughts are and what if the topic makes sense to be unpacked in this, because again, from the simplistic standpoint, he's in violation of the law. What are we considering beyond that? What are we considering beyond that? And I'll start there. Justin, since you're new to the space and you unmuted yourself, feel free. Have at it.
Yeah. So, first of all, thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it. My name is Justin Rasco. For those of you who weren't at the meeting this morning, I actually met Bob and Felton just today, and so yeah, I have a lot of opinions on, So first of all, everyone sees the world through their own set of eyes. I can never help but to see the world as a black man, because that's been my lived experience. And so when I see a judge sit on a bench and admonish the prosecution for speaking to this, I'll call him a young man. I'll refer to him in that way, referring to this young man and effectively defending him, when he had the wherewithal to basically bring an assault weapon to a demonstration and then end up killing people. I can't help but to say to myself, what would that look like if someone that looked like me were sitting in that same position? Would his demeanor, would his conviction be the same? I have no way of knowing. I don't know anything about this judge. I've only seen what we've been exposed to in the news and the clip that you just showed. But it's difficult for me to imagine that his response would be different if if the defendant were of a different background. Um, um, yeah, it just seems to me that the response will be different, and so that becomes a point of frustration for me, because it's difficult for someone who doesn't have my lived experience to see it from that vantage point. But those are things that become immediately obvious to me when I watch clips like that, which can be very frustrating, because what do? You can't, you don't have any say over who the judge is. You don't have any say over how the case is prosecuted and defended. The best thing that you can do is sit in circles like this and try to kind of describe what it is that we're seeing and what that means for us, which is a very long-winded way of saying, from my vantage point, if Kyle Rittenhouse was of a different background and persuasion, the judge's response, I think, would be very different than what it has been to this point. I'm curious to know what other people think about that.
We'll definitely get to them. And in that context, again, that's absolutely attached to the realm of the topic. There's so much to be considered, and you're right. The personal lived experience makes a significant difference in terms of how you view situations such as this. But again, we get to this point where we lose that potential for a competent middle, because we're attached to so many other streams of thought that are worthy of some level of consideration. I'm not saying that we shouldn't consider some of this stuff. Not, considering all things, though. That reporter rattled off all of the, like I said, the race issue, the gun rights issue, the ideas of heroism under those type circumstances, property. There's so much that just kind of detracts from the just understanding that situation was preventable. And even if it up until the point where the assaults take place, the fact that he gets to walk out of there, and that's what we're talking about at the end of the day, Justin, he gets to walk out of there, go home, and then has to turn himself in the next day. And now he's got a judge who yeah, it seems like if somebody else does something like that, there's a strong level, there's a strong potential that that wouldn't be the same level of animus that he expressed, as simply as a line of questioning. Um, just long time no see, man. I don't know how heavy your opinions are on this matter, and I hope the topic makes sense to you tonight. I tried to explain the best I could. I know you slid in the home plate under the tag, and I'm glad that when I got back to the screen, you were there. But is the considering of all things healthy for a reactive society, and is there a competent middle? So based on that, the clip I just showed, you can just unpack the clip. But if you can wrestle with that idea some, that'd be great too. I know you always been a man of few words, but glad to have you back. So unmic yourself and say what you say, man.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because I've been through those situations. I know basically what's going on. So I'm going through a situation right now that's similar to to that, to that situation. Not so much as with guns, but on the topic of siding with others, and not how should I say, someone that looks like me. They tend to not support you. I'll put it that way. Um, I have to go about it a roundabout way in order to make a point, even though more attacks will end up coming towards me. Um, but you have to do it smartly. You have to outsmart them and see. I've been in, like I said, similar situations when I was living in Rhode Island, and coming to here, I'm facing the same kind of problems. But now that I know um, how to go about things, but you have to tippy toe around some of these problems that you do run into. Um, so for me, it's kind of just lay back and let them kind of to attack, and then you kind of counterattack them once they make their first move, because once they make their first move, then they know that then they got you, because you would the human what do I want to say, the human reaction is to, once they attack you, is to basically go right at them, and that's when they got you, because now they put you in a position where that they got a hold of you. Um, and so that's, I'll leave it just there.
Sounds like now I'm gonna try to dissect some of that just because I'm a little bit that was a little bit vagary. But are you speaking about being in the mix with the powers that be to an extent and having to play chess? Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you've dealt with some issues in that world, so I won't we won't have to go too deep into that. But I got what you're saying. If you get caught up in something like that, you got to play a little bit of chess if you
Right. Right.
yeah, I got you. Yeah, I guess more or less that situation, if it's inverted and it's something at your doorstep and having to go in front of a judge and all that type thing, there's a different type of game you have to play. I don't know how far crying and whatever that was taking place during that moment that they showed, that clip that they showed. He was emotional. I don't know if that translates well for some other people. I don't know. But Bob, what are your thoughts on this thing, man? Break it down. Do I need to? I think you understand the prompt better than anybody else on here right now. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that I've got so many thoughts on this because what is it that made that guy think he ought to be there? Why was he there? Why was he there? And it, to your point, Felton, that's where it starts. Why was he there? Why? What are the forces that cause him to feel like he should be there, that he has the authority to be there, that he has the responsibility to be there, to go into a situation like this? And then fast forward to this trial, the prosecutor has discretion, the judge has discretion. The prosecutor decides apparently that he's going to be aggressive. The judge has discretion. Okay, maybe the judge is just socially further retarded in things than the prosecutor. And so he's going to exercise his power and all of that. We've got so many different forces at play with all of this stuff. And this is a particularly, Felton, you and I have our relationships that involve the death of Fred Cox last year in High Point. Monday was the anniversary of his shooting. And so Monday there was a protest at the courthouse in downtown Greensboro. Monday there was also a vigil in High Point because it was the anniversary date of his death. And here's a situation that an 18-year-old black man was taking a woman and her 12-year-old son into the side door of a church because there was drive-by shooting on the other side of the church. And a plainclothes Lexington or Davidson County detective decided to shoot 4 times in the back this 18-year-old young man, unarmed, simply escorting a woman and her 12-year-old son into the side door of a church on the other side of the church from where the shootings were occurring. No alert, no announcement, and he's shooting an unarmed young man who is probably 2 feet from an unarmed woman who is embracing her 12-year-old son 4 times in the back of the 18-year-old. One of those bullets grazed the 12-year-old. And 367 days later, no charges have been filed against the guy that did the shooting. This is wrong on every imaginable level. It's if you look at the facts and if you look at the space, it's an assassination. And I can guarantee you that if that had been my son that was shot, there would have been a trial by now. But not in this case. And so there are all of these dynamics, and we are so muddying, and we are so what's the right term? Conflagrating or something. There's a term I want to use.
Conflating.
Yeah. That there's law, there's opinion, there's prejudice, there's values, and they're all getting so mixed up. We want our beliefs in church to be the law. We want the law to be our prejudice. We want all of these things. And who is out there with power and authority sorting this out and drawing hard lines and keeping all of this stuff separate? Because all of this stuff has to be kept separate. We have a country founded on principles. Who's defending those principles? Who's safeguarding those principles? We've got a country that's founded on religious freedom, but not on religious control, and yet we have all of this, and we have all this messed up mindset even around religion and whatnot, and we feel like we have the power to bring all of that stuff in defense of our country. And we it seems to me are so void of both leadership and accountability, and we're letting this just disintegrate. I don't have a better word.
Yeah, there's a level of rationale that I think we're lacking, and some of what we discussed earlier this morning at that previous meeting was centered on the algorithm, the social media aspects and ideas, and I can call it sensationalism. I think the sensationalism element is on steroids when it comes to social media, when it comes to how reactive we are, and in some cases, without just that beat that we should have to really process exactly what we're looking at. And in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, in the case Freddie Cox, I just think we overcomplicate things, and then we have an opportunity in these situations to get in front of what could potentially take place.
And we have so many presumptions. I mean, I think that Kyle Rittenhouse presumes that, oh, I'm white, I'm male, I can walk into this situation because I'm of the power group, and then they let me go home. I can walk back in and just voluntarily be checked in and whatnot. I mean, what kind of arrogance and privilege and sense of entitlement does that whole scenario convey? And I would imagine that he actually so thoroughly takes that to heart that he and I would imagine that in his mind and his heart, he thinks to this day that he played his role right.
There's a buoying up of this idea of righteousness under the most atrocious circumstances. And in my mind, this case falls into that George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin realm. This idea of self-preservation superseding your responsibility to be a decent person in certain circumstances, to be a citizen that is considerate of those you might affect by the weapon you possess.
And I think that has moved from simply physical preservation to ideological preservation.
Absolutely. That was always just bubbling on the, and bubbling underneath, and now it's on the surface. And the justice system seems to identify and recognize it at certain points. Justin, you were unmuted a couple times. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I was, to Bob's point about, the sense of authority that Kyle had is breathtaking when you actually watch the original video. I mean, this guy is walking around with a freaking rifle in the middle of the street. There's no shame. There's no embarrassment. There is no humility about it whatsoever. And then he gets on the stand and then he cries these fake crocodile tears, because, again, from his vantage point, he shouldn't be there. I mean, from his vantage point, from in his mind, I think in his mind, he's saying, "Who are these people to sit me in this seat as if I've done something wrong?" Because to Bob's point, I don't think psychologically in his mind he thinks he did anything wrong, because there's a very deep seated belief system that he brings to the table, which says, "I'm young, I'm white, I'm in America. We have the right to do whatever we want with these guns. We have the right to do citizens arrests." I'm not saying that was specifically what he was thinking about, but that's the line of thinking. And it's just it's so shocking and it's so breathtaking when you watch it through a different set of eyes, because in different ways, both the judge, I think, and Kyle can't really see how they come across to other people. And to me, it's so clear and it's so obvious.
Yeah, that part, that clear and obvious is what we seem to just get muddied up at points that, as I stated, is detrimental to us being better together. And again, this takes place in the backdrop of a shooting that was, that Jacob Blake, elements of resistance. Maybe he's going to his car when he shouldn't have. It was a lot going on and taking place. But the way he was shot within the door frame of his car and the number of times the weapon was discharged, there are just these moments that I think we can handle a little better, and we just keep dropping the ball. We just keep dropping the ball, and that's part of what I'm saying. We consider so many things in hindsight, not when we should, and not to be proactive, but the reactions are just through the roof. And I have no clue, no idea where this goes as far as what may come of this trial, because now, they're talking about mistrial being on the board and being at the judge's discretion. And if they mistrial it with prejudice, there will not be another trial. There's some fascinating things taking place in this country, and I hope for the best. Jess, you have any other thoughts you wanted to contribute before I transition to the next clip?
No, just play smart. That's all I have to say. Well, that's where that chess game comes in. You gotta know, you know they're going to play that card, just like they claim that we played the card. Well, you gotta kind of react to that.
And the fascinating thing about this card in this situation, I think it shot 3 white people, but it's in the backdrop of this protest of Jacob Blake's shooting, him being shot. Man, just all of this is just a lot of things that are being considered when there was a curfew. He's walking around with a gun that I don't think was legal. It's a crazy situation, but we're considering so much. So I was going to play one more clip that's still trying to stay in the realm of this topic. It's a couple of weeks late, but it is something that our gracious NC 100 CEO wanted to kind of unpack, and unfortunately he couldn't make it tonight, having a little technical difficulties. But I'm going to do it, and he can watch it later. So you guys may be familiar with Dave Chappelle's most recent stand-up special on Netflix, The Closer. And in this stand-up comedy show, he had jokes and observations concerning the LGBTQ community. And there was a lot of heat, a lot of pushback. The canceling alarms went off, and we have to get them up out of here. And people at Netflix, some LGBTQ community members, decided to stage a walkout. A lot of stuff took place in the shadow of this performance. I'm going to just play Dave Chappelle's response to what took place, and that's the clip I'll play. This attempt to cancel him. And we'll come back to the other side, because again, I'm trying to get this topic to get some traction, and I think you guys are getting what I'm going with, what I'm trying to put in the context here. But in the considering of all, is the considering of all things healthy for a reactive society? Because we're considering a whole lot based on a stand-up, a comedian's stand-up, and we kind of lose ourselves. We don't get to that middle. So let me share this clip of him responding to what everybody had to say that said something negative. Here we go. And here we go.
Said in the press that I was invited to speak to transgender employees at Netflix, and I refused. That is not true. If they had invited me, I would have accepted it, although I am confused about what we're speaking about. I said what I said, and boy, I heard what you said. My God, how could I not? You said you want a safe working environment at Netflix. Well, it seems like I'm the only one that can't go to the office anymore. I want everyone in this audience to know that even though the media frames us that it's me versus that community, that's not what it is. It's not blame the LGBTQ community for any of this shit. This has nothing to do with them. It's about corporate interests and what I can say and what I cannot say. For the record, and I need you to know this, everyone I know from that community has been nothing but loving and supporting. So I don't know what all this nonsense is about. In summer 2020, when the whole world shut down, I was outside doing shows. My neighbor had a cornfield, and he let me throw shows there, and people came from all over the country. Some people came from around the world to see those shows. The best comedians on earth came to my home and broke bread with me, and we lived our lives. We found a way to keep moving forward. I made a whole documentary about it. The first night of those shows was a piece that some of you might have seen. It was called 846, and it dealt with the murder of George Floyd. This film that I made was invited to every film festival in the United States, and some of those invitations I accepted. This controversy came out about the closer. They began disinviting me from these film festivals. And now, today, not a film company, not a movie studio, not a film festival, nobody will touch this film. Thank God for Ted Sarandos at Netflix. He's the only one that didn't cancel me yet. To the transgender community, I am more than willing to give you an audience, but you will not summon me. I am not bending to anybody's demands. And if you want to meet with me, I'd be more than willing to, but I have some conditions. First of all, you cannot come if you have not watched my special from beginning to end. You must come to a place of my choosing, at a time of my choosing. And thirdly, you must admit that Hannah Gatsby is not funny. I desperately want people to see this movie. understand why investors would be nervous. Since nobody will touch it, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will make it available for all of you. 10 American cities going on sale in the next few days. You will be able to see this movie in its entirety, and you can see what they're trying to obstruct you from seeing. And you can judge for yourself. But you cannot have this conversation and exclude my voice from it. That is only fair. You have to answer the question, am I canceled or not? Then let's go. Thank you very much, and good night.
So, by no means am I placing Chappelle on a pedestal or taking any of this to a point of he's beyond reproach and you can't criticize him and what have you. But again, he's a comedian in this circumstance situation. What are we considering beyond that? We're considering feelings and emotions of people, and I say people and individuals because, as he mentioned, the LGBTQ community is not who he believes is culpable in his attempted cancellation. He's calling out corporate interests and just this idea that everything is to be wrestled with and to be considered. Back again to the topic tonight. So I did not realize how much time was flying, but I do want to go around the space and hear from you all if you have ideas and thoughts concerning what you just saw in his response and keeping it in the realm of what tonight's topic is, because again, he's having to do a response to a comedy show. That's I feel like that's new ground. I really do. Justin, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, has anyone seen Dave Chappelle before? I mean, first of all, if you've watched the Chappelle show for any period of time, you already know what you're dealing with Dave Chappelle. You don't bring Dave Chappelle to, your kindergarten class for a reason, right? You bring him because he is sensational. You bring him because he's controversial. You bring him because he's going to say things that nobody else is going to say, even if they're thinking it. And then you want to persecute the guy for saying what and probably intended or wanted or paid him to come and do, right? Which is create the controversy, create a storm where there's higher levels of viewership on Netflix and whatever other platform he's streaming on. But I mean, at the end of the day, they knew what they were signing up for, and this shock and this outrage, is just surprising because we're talking about Dave Chappelle. If we were talking about, Condoleezza Rice saying the same words, yeah, there's controversy there. If you're talking about Dave Chappelle, I mean, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's a wonderful analogy or comparison, or whatever that. Yeah, who's the messenger? You know who the messenger is, and he makes a living making those uncomfortable comments that everybody's thinking and nobody wants to say, as you mentioned, Justin. So yeah, this is just another thing that I think is an indicator of, hey, let's react to something. Let's not try to get to that middle. Let's just react. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. So I agree with what Justin just said, but more to the core of this for me, you've got a collection of people who have been marginalized for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And the black guy who is still marginalized can't make jokes about the groups that are coming out of being marginalized without being canceled. I'm sorry. I mean, I think fundamentally that's the issue. And you know, we've made we aren't where we need to be in any of this, but we have made so much faster progress in some areas and so little progress in others. And the guy that's a part of the progress that's been so little is potentially canceled because he's making jokes around people who are making strides and coming out of that. That's the thing that's you know, and if you really care and pay attention, which we all should, Dave Chappelle is not anti-LGBTQ at all. He's making jokes as a part of his craft. It is not him. It's his craft.
Yeah, social commentary, jokes, social commentary. Big part of the closer was talking about punching down. Yeah, I don't think he's punched down at all. He's an equal opportunity offender. And it just was amazing that I actually thought when the reactions first started taking place that it was going to go away fairly quickly. It wouldn't get traction. People realized, oh, I hadn't watched the whole thing or whatever. I don't know how people even got to that point and stayed at the point of thinking that it meant he should be canceled. I just still am dumbfounded as to how that takes place. It was a deep set. It was not even the most hilarious stand-up. It was pretty deep. And at the end, when he's talking about his friend who was LGBTQ, the most salient thing, the thing that I thought was the bright and shining moment, was when he said that friend responded to him with emotion in a moment and said, I'm having a human moment. I want you to recognize that. I think that was the right wording. I'm not positive. I feel like I'm remembering it correctly, but he said, I'm having a human moment. Our existence is worthy of questions and thoughts and things, but sometimes we don't need to consider all things. That's the moral of tonight's topic and story. We don't need to consider all things.
And if we can't accommodate jests and jokes about ourselves, that's our failing, and that's a representation of our own insecurities that we have to solve. Other people can't solve that. We're reflecting issues that we haven't solved within ourselves. And so until we can do that, that's not on Dave Chappelle or anybody else. That's on the people that are too sensitive, that don't have the confidence, and it's adults' jobs to get right with themselves.
Yeah, and malicefulness matters. If there was malice involved, I would be I'll be amongst the first and foremost ones to be critical. But there was no malice. There was a lot of empathy, a lot of consideration, and some humor. Jess, you got anything you want to throw out there before we get out of here in regards to the Chappelle apology and all of that?
No, I'm good. I agree with Justin. I was going to promote something, but I'll wait till Melo jumps on, because it deals with him also.
Oh, okay, you want to wait to the next week? We'll be talking on some thankful stuff since Thanksgiving will be the following week, and I know we'll be off. So if you want to hold it till then, that's fine with me, Jeff. That work? All right, sound good. Hey, look, man, this has been great. As always, glad that we got the people we got, and some of the people out there listening. You greatly appreciate it, and join us, Justin. Appreciate you coming in here this evening. Jumping in feet first.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely.
Hey, Justin, I echo that. Thanks for coming. Thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely, guys.
Yeah, man. And look forward to more and more of this type of conversation in the squares, outside of the squares, in real life. It's just important to step outside of that, as Justin mentioned earlier, our own perspective. Step outside of it, but we just don't need to just overwhelm ourselves and be reactive to every little thing. Some stuff, be like a duck, let it roll off your back. Everyone have a wonderful night. Take care, and I'll see you on the other side of this thing. Be good.